with a song in my heart, I behold your adorable face. Just
Greetings from Castle Goring, from Mickey, Aurora, and from me. I have a lot of ground to cover today on a variety of subjects, and I have to watch the time. So I am going to plunge right in with what Jacqueline Griffiths says. I'm so happy to hear Thomas Markle Sr. has had such a positive response. It's good to know thousands have donated to his birthday fund. Human nature at its best. I wish him well and hope he realizes how many of us actually care, big block capitals, about him. It's wonderful news. Thank you very much. I have read that out. It's representative of many other comments. The whole thing has exceeded my expectations in the most wonderful way. Of course, the Markles have been in touch with me about it, and they are so touched, I can't tell you. I think I'm going to wind it up at the end of the week. So those who wish to have a last plunge in the pool, so to speak, please feel free to do so. And everybody who has given, thank you so much. And to those of you who would have liked to give but couldn't afford to, thank you for your good wishes also. So, Tone Lise Ostbo says, Martha Louise is from Norway, and the shaman Durek is gay, has been to prison and also left his ex-boyfriend in debt. H.G. Tudor got it right. His mother warns everyone against him, and he called her parents, our king and queen, racists. Oh, where have we heard that one before? If you're unsuitable in terms of history and character, it's not got a thing to do with your conduct or character. It's everything to do with the colour of your skin. Blah-de-blah-de-blah. Love to you, Lady C, and all at the castle and fur babies. Big doggy hugs. God bless you, Lady C. Thank you very much for that. Now, I have to say, several people wrote in to correct me, and one of them actually then, having corrected me, corrected herself, because at the end of that segment, I corrected myself. So it's really nice to know that so many of you are on top of the situation and that you responded immediately. But yeah, I knew she was from Norway. I just, had a momentary lapse. Maybe it's Anno Domini, maybe it's just overwork. I don't really know what it was, but maybe it's just that I'm human. Oh dear, that is awful, isn't it? Mistakes. Well, thank you all very much for the correction. And yeah, but I did correct myself at the end. So now I have eaten my lashings of humble pie. I am going to go on to the Last Supper. Christina C. says, it may have looked like a parody of Da Vinci's Last Supper, but I think it was supposed to represent a bacchanalian feast, and original Olympians competed naked. Yes, they did. I've been to Olympus, Mount Olympus, where they competed. Not only did they compete naked, enemies competed, which of course is something that our modern Olympiads seem to forget. We're busy excluding people on the grounds that we don't like their politics. When in ancient Greece, everybody came together, enemies as well as friends. So, having said that, the Dionysian rites, and as they Dionysus is the Greek god that was converted effectively into Bacchus, who was a Roman god, hence Bacchanalian. And we actually have a cold stone statue of Bacchus on the south facade of this building. If you care to look at the south face of this building, you will see there are 3 statues: Pan, Bacchus, and Ceres, which tend to indicate that Castle Goring was built for hospitality. Well, Bacchanalian feasts were not, they never took place at tables, sitting down. So right there, that is a whole load of rubbish. They are trying to obfuscate, and they are trying to really, as I'm going to read out what the next person says, because it answers it very succinctly and very well. But they're trying to gaslight us. I'm sorry, the Last Supper is a very famous picture. It was the 12 apostles were seated behind the table with Jesus at the center. Sorry, Bacchanalian feasts were wild. They were bacchanalian. They were drunken. They were celebratory of all the sensual pleasures. Nobody sat at a table. So that is a total lie when they try to make out that it wasn't what we have perceived it to be. Yes, it was what we have perceived it to be. And also, I notice nobody's complaining about the extremely offensive image of Marie Antoinette singing from her mouth, despite the fact that she no longer has a head, which, I mean, since when did we celebrate the murder of innocent women? So, user 6C7 blah 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 says, Dear Lady C, sorry to continue with this, but the drag queens were coming out of the picture itself. Their gaslighting is so offensive. I think what this comment is referring to is the gaslighting of the explanations, not the gaslighting of the parody itself. Different characters were coming out of pictures in the museum, such as the Mona Lisa, and the drags came out of the Last Supper itself. They've even dragged some Dutch historian, I believe, in to claim it was based on another picture about Bacchus that looks nothing like it. Why? Why? Because they have to gaslight us. They have to lie. They have to say that what we have seen isn't what we saw, that we got it wrong when we got it right. It's called shamelessness. I will continue with the question. Also, they're giving it the spin that some people look for resemblances that don't exist or want to find reasons to be offended, piling on Christians ever further or calling them far right. This woke denial and shift blaming is so disgusting. I couldn't agree more. They only regret the complaints from sponsors. Oh, well, as soon as the pocket is hit, you can depend on it, my dear. Everybody is concerned nowadays. Nobody cares about honor, but they care about the baseline. Why do some people need to impose themselves on every tiny corner of society, history, culture, convert everything and everyone into themselves, while acting as victims if anyone raises his voice? it's years now, I've come to the conclusion that they're basically entitled totalitarians. Only their feelings matter. Sorry, but this never ends. I have read it out because I totally agree with it. The people who defend their right to lie, to be as abusive and offensive as they elect, and then to try to gaslight those who have perceived the reality of what they're about as delusional. They are the latest totalitarian orthodoxy. We have had totalitarian orthodoxies in various ways, shapes, and forms throughout the history of civilization. This is simply the latest incarnation. But I think because we have access to platforms where we can express our disapproval, they are finding it difficult to get away with it. But they are totalitarians. They are. It is a new religion, a religion without scruples, without morals, without God. It is a religion that is like communism, is a religion without God. These are belief systems. What do you think a religion is? A religion is a belief system. And they are godless religions. And they're bullies as well. But then totalitarians are. David Cooper says, quote from the Hamptons, when Meghan arrived, "Hey, the caterers have arrived." Can you believe it, David Cooper? They said that the caterers have arrived, not that the caterers have arriven. Cock your finger, we take tea because we're classy with a capital K. I understand that people said a lot more than that, some of which I'm afraid I'm not able to repeat because I would fall afoul of certain rules and regulations governing this platform. But I understand that the reception that she got was in some ways akin to that which she received at Terra Nova in Jamaica. Meghan's so classy that nobody with class or money really wants to be bothered about her. And yeah, but I'm going to read out another comment from Helen Leach because this is very appropriate. The reports coming out of America about the Hamptons' visit are hilarious. I saw a meme on the Royal Grift's YouTube. It was a picture of a brown sack bag against Meghan in her beige outfit. It was titled, "Who Wore It Better?" Reese Witherspoon and Gwyneth Paltrow were also at the Hamptons' Women in Business event, and it is said they could not get away from Meghan quick enough. I understand that they went to great lengths to avoid Meghan. They did not want to be contaminated. That's what I was told. Now, Reese Witherspoon has made herself hundreds of millions, as has Gwyneth Paltrow. You could say they are successful businesswomen. What has Meghan made herself? Into an idiot, into a mockery. Gone from being a royal duchess and a royal highness to an unroyal aloneness who scrambles to sell jam without even selling jam. My goodness, what a progression from right up there to right down here, and it's all been achieved with lots of moving and shaking, and I'm so clever. I'm just going to be able to trash everybody, and everybody's going to worship at my altar. And why aren't they doing it? It's got to be because they're racist. Let me continue. Gwyneth Paltrow had a luncheon of her own at a town to the north of the Hamptons event, and they were all photographed. There were quite a few famous A-listers there, as well as billionaires. Meghan was not amongst them. Well, of course she wouldn't be, but we'll get to that. Her reputation has tanked in the USA as well. Helen Leach, why are you so unkind? Her reputation hasn't tanked. She has elevated herself to demigoddess status. She cannot mix with mere billionaires. She needs to show us that she is bacchanalian in her success. And she's going to devour all the contents of the table of the Last Supper. Well, thank you for that, Helen Leach. Yes, her reputation has tanked in the USA as well. I wonder how this is all going to continue at the rate it's going. Because the woman shamelessly lurches from disaster to disaster, from failure to failure, with the Richter screen and clothes that systematically never fit. I don't know why she can't wear clothes that fit. Oh, I think I do know why she wears clothes that don't fit. She gets sample sizes. Oh, yes. She gets samples and they have to be returned. Oh, that could be an explanation. Michelle Law says, hi, Lady C. I just saw a news article that William and Harry mourn another family member. I did not know that Lord Robert Fellows had died. I know he was the late Queen's private secretary, brother-in-law to Diana. Please forgive me if you have already mentioned this. What can you tell us about him? Thank you, God bless. Well, I couldn't have mentioned it before because the news was released after my last broadcast. So he died aged 82. He was married to Jane Spencer, Lady Jane Spencer, who was Diana's elder sister, not eldest, elder sister. They had 3 children. He was also Sarah York's first cousin once removed, because his mother was Ronald Ferguson's aunt. His mother was a Ferguson. He was born and he was brought up at Sandringham. He was born to the land agent of Sandringham, and he was sent to Eton. He was bright. He was, everybody who knows him except Dan and Sarah, they used to call him Bobby Bellows, because he used to carpet them for unsuitable behavior. And of course, his position was delicate, or you could have said it was strengthened by the fact that he was Diana's brother-in-law and Sarah's cousin. But he had the full confidence of the Queen. He was rather, in many ways, like the Queen. They were both pretty phlegmatic personalities. They both rolled with the punches. They were both very straight, very honourable, very decent, and they didn't make a drama into a crisis, and they didn't make a mistake into a drama, and they didn't sensationalize matters. He was, according to everybody who knew him well, very kind, very straightforward, very decent. He was as straight as an arrow. He batted properly, etc., etc. He started out as the assistant deputy private secretary. Then he became the assistant private secretary. Then he became the private secretary. And he was the private secretary in the most turbulent years of the reign. If I remember correctly, he succeeded Sir William Heseltine, who was the Australian, in, I think it was 1990. So he was there for all of the dramas, with my book Down in Private, Andrew Morton's book, Diana, Her Untrue Story, the Annus Horribilis of 1992, the separations and divorces of Diana, Sarah, and Anne, Anne's remarriage. I think he retired in 1999, and he was then made a lord. But before that, he was knighted. And if I remember correctly, he was very involved even afterwards with, I have a feeling it was the Order of Merit. I could be wrong. And he also became an advocate for improving the conditions in prisons. He went on a prison visit and couldn't believe the dehumanized way in which prisoners were treated. And he understood that huge prisons were absolutely counterproductive to anything but recidivism. He was a decent man. He was very kind about Diana. Diana was very cutting about him. And of course, at the time of her death, she was on the outs with her sister Jane, as she was with Bobby Bellows. So he had the confidence of the Queen. And I can tell you, it's very unlikely, had he or Christopher Geit remained in post, that some of the nonsense that has happened would have happened. I just make that point for what it's worth. Julie UK says, Lady Colin Campbell, I was very interested to hear the explanation given to you by a royal as to why no photos of Meghan Markle are in the royal collection. Did you then question them with, if the family did not wish to enable her to continue to exploit them, why is she still on the royal website with a link to her decidedly questionable website? Surely, if the family no longer want to be seen to be connected to her, the first and most direct action would be to remove her from the website. Very good observation. But may I point out, fallacious on one or two grounds. It's one thing to try to put distance by not having a presence where there was an absence, and trying to remove a presence so it becomes an absence. My own feeling is that Harry and Meghan should be removed from the royal website altogether. That's my feeling. I think there is a lot of justification for it, and it should be done. I understand why there are hesitations about doing it. Harry is the son of the king. To remove him could be regarded as provocative and insulting, and would be taken as such by Harry and Meghan. Personally speaking, I've never had any compunction about insulting people who I felt needed to be insulted, and I don't see why they're so worried about it. Well, I do see why they're so worried about it. Maybe they don't have quite the stomach that other people such as I have. So, but I hope that makes it clear to you there's a heck of a difference between trying to keep a pond pure with absence and eliminating a presence. I think that's the most effective way of putting it. Irene says, did you notice in the TV interview Harry saying that when he talks about when he talks publicly, about his family, he gets lots of online abuse. He wasn't concerned about the impact it had on them, but how talking about his family was going to impact on him. Well, Harry is very self-centered. He's very stupid. He's very narcissistic, has become more so under the ministrations of Narcissus par excellence. And he doesn't care. And he is as wildly inconsistent as she is. Aurora, wake up, honey. Go into the kitchen, get Mummy some Coke. She feels as if she needs something to sort of, settle things down a bit. She's sniffling and clearing her throat. Harry gives himself away at practically every turn. You notice that in that interview, he had what was most likely absolute control over his contribution. It's really interesting because it would appear that it is not possible for Harry and or Meghan to be interviewed by anybody who is not totally hemmed in and hamstrung by them. And there is a good reason why. And this is also the reason why the documentary in Germany is suffering. Because you have to, as a contributor, have to give permission for your contribution to be aired. And if you do not give your permission, it can't be aired. And what has happened with the German documentary is that evidently some of the contributors have been reached. You know, Harry and Meghan have no compunction about throwing their weight around. What I find astonishing is that people don't understand the way to deal with a bully is to be honorable decent, correct, and courageous. And then make sure you're not in the wrong. And if you're not in the wrong, defy them to bully you. Because the club of justice is ultimately bigger than the club of injustice. It just needs to be wielded correctly. Ida Coatsey says, Huw Edwards, a BBC presenter, is charged with the most serious crime against children. Hopefully he is locked up for the remainder of his life. His depravity has destroyed lives of children. I have zero sympathy for creepy old men of great wealth and fame who abuse children. Well, Ida Coatsey, I recognize your name. You are a great contributor, and thank you for your contribution. Well, I don't want to be drawn into this too much. I'm a bit of a prude, in case you haven't figured that out. I may be very liberal in many ways, but I believe in cleanliness. Let's put it that way. And I don't like decadence. But it is emerging that the police have been suppressing evidence and depriving the media of the right to information that would have actually elucidated upon the way Huw Edwards ended up being charged, because it now emerges that he was caught up in something as a result of a WhatsApp chat room. There was an incident with him with a 17-year-old youth who is a drug addict, and his mother reported Huw Edwards to the police. And I think this was in 2023. And they decided that no crime had been committed. What they did not say was that when they were investigating another offender who has since been tried, found guilty, and given, I think, a 2-year suspended sentence, that Huw Edwards was also involved in that situation. So it seems that as he got older, and maybe I need to be careful. I don't want to go into any depth about this, because aside from the fact it's distasteful, it involves images of children of the age of, I think, 7 and 9. Now, I'm sorry, that's seriously sick. However, as long as there was no physical connection, I think the law will take, as they have done with the person who has been found guilty and he's been given a suspended sentence, I suspect they will take as a similarly lenient view of Huw Edwards. What is ominous about this all is, first of all, the extent to which the BBC has gone about covering up any complicity that might exist in the matter. And to protect themselves, they have evidently protected him, but also the police. Now, if it had not been Huw Edwards at the BBC, if it had been Huw Edwards at one of the commercial channels, you can depend on it, he would have been thrown to the wolves immediately, because the police systematically tip off the press. Not only do they tip off the press, in this instance, they bent over backwards to prevent the press finding out what was going on. It's been totally accidental that this has come out yesterday. This has only emerged yesterday as a result of the evidence and Huw Edwards pleading guilty. Now, you could say the matter has been handled decorously. Well, if they're handling it decorously for a member of the BBC, they should be handling matters equally decorously for Russell Brand, Dan Wooten, etc., 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 none of which they handled except in the most appalling fashion. And I'll tell you better, in 2016, somebody going between 88 and 130 miles an hour slammed into my car and nearly killed me and himself and another woman coming on the motorway in the opposite direction. The police went to great lengths to suppress the evidence that he was picked up for drunken and drug driving and had his license taken away. None of this, when we found it out, could be used in court, and they bent over backwards to nail me. Why? Because I'm not a member of the BBC. I fall on the wrong side of the political divide where they are concerned. Huw Edwards fell on the right side of the political divide. Now, I have to say, I have no brief for people who indulge in certain activities. But one does have to feel a degree of compassion for somebody who was so eminent and who, through really rather unfortunate tastes, this is YouTube, so I'm choosing my words very decorously and being extremely euphemistic, but his life, I think, as we know it, is over. I think he is totally disgraced. He will remain totally disgraced. I think that there is no way back for him. And I think that it is unfortunate that, this is a man evidently with 5 children and a wife, but evidently he's now separated. And I suppose one could stretch to a bit of compassion for him, being an older man. Maybe in his generation, people did not succumb to certain tastes. And certainly if if what he has pled guilty to is any indication of where his interests truly lay, it's just as well that he embarked upon an elaborate exercise to avoid the reality of where his tastes lay, because he got married, he had children, he was a study of respectability, which just goes to show People can be so hypocritical. But maybe his interests were things he was somewhat ashamed of. One would hope that his interests were things he was somewhat ashamed of. But more than that, I really don't wish to say, except that the way the BBC have gone about protecting one of their own leads one to appreciate how very adept they are at protecting their own and how hypocritical they are in doing so. Because if it's anybody else, they go hell for leather. So they need to have a rather more consistent approach to the way they apply their ethics and their considerations of conduct. And as for the police, I'm appalled that yet again we see how totally prejudiced the police are in favor of only one or two segments of the population. They will bend over backwards to protect. They didn't protect Harvey Procter. They didn't protect Dan Wooten. They didn't protect Russell Brand. They didn't protect me when I was a victim of a drug-addled, drunken driver. They had to have my scalp to nail me to the post, even though they knew that they didn't have a leg to stand on. And they carefully coached him to perjure himself in the witness box. Oh, Your Honour, I was only going 57, or was it 67? I knew exactly how much I was going because my eye drifted onto the speedometer as I was approaching and saw this mad woman shoot out in front of me. And of course, if I had been going at the speed I say I was going at, the accident wouldn't have happened. But I've been coached so carefully that, and of course, you being magistrates are going to prefer my evidence, since you know I've been coached by the police, and you know the police have got up and told a whole load of lies, because that's how they function. I hate to say it. They love their scalps. Many police are wonderful and decent, but far too many of them are just disgraceful. And on that note, I will move on to something else. Desert Flower says, I think it highly likely that Harry and Meghan were absolutely furious that the Queen conducted an investigation into Meghan's bullying claims among the royal household. In Meghan's mind, that's how Meghan treats everybody. How dare that woman order an investigation into her? I suspect that's what Harry is claiming the royal family must apologise to Meghan for. Your reasoning certainly has merit, and yes, I am told that Meghan was absolutely spitting bricks, as was Harry. How dare they? How dare they? And how dare William support it? And how dare the Queen dare to allow it? Who the hell does that woman think she is? I mean, that broken down old woman, who does she think she is? That's what I'd like to know. You can almost hear the thought passing through the mind. But my understanding is that's not what their main bone of contention is. My understanding is their main bone of contention is that after Birkenhead, when Harry and Meghan set up the whole thing about her ideation, I've got to, just because you have your therapist on speed dial, and I, of course, being pregnant, have my obstetrician on speed dial, and she's got to monitor my mental health, but we're not going to avail ourselves of any of those people because they're experts. We're going to go to Buckingham Palace, and we're going to go to HR, and I'm going to tell them that I've had ideations and I need help. I want to be sent to Soho House with a psychiatrist to get over the horror of what's happening to me with the press. Of course, he didn't tell them what the main concern was. And Charles and William both told them, I am told, that there was told Harry that there was no possibility of the family taking on the press and picking up a cudgel on their behalf. Of course, they never told Charles and William what their real concern was. But they led Charles and William to believe it was the press. Since my ideations are just so frightening. One tail left eye. Gordon, please, I need a 40 million, my mouth slipped. I didn't really mean billion. I mean, if you'd like to give me 40 billion, I'd certainly be happy to take it, but just a $40 million house. I've got a target on my back. Do we begin to see the true insanity of the whole enterprise and exercise, and the total irrationality that the Queen would have not been entitled to exercise her right as monarch of this country to protect the civil liberties of her subjects against her son, grandson, and granddaughter-in-law. Oh, yes. I'm told that both Harry and Meghan had their nose severely out of joint about that investigation, and they knew that it was the Queen. But Harry wasn't, and Meghan were clever enough and conniving enough and self-preservative enough to know that if they told anybody that they had it in for the Queen, that they would have been toast. So they said Sir Edward, that's who it was, the Queen's private secretary. He was the monster. He was the one who should be blamed. When Harry knows as well as I do, and Meghan should know, that the Queen was in charge till she lost consciousness, as was proven by her executing her duties just shortly before she died. She was totally lucid, totally on the ball with Boris Johnson, with Liz Truss, with the priest. She was with the doctor. She was totally in command of herself and her thoughts and executing her duty. But they didn't have the temerity to blame her publicly or even privately. But they blamed Sir Edward. But I am told by people who know them well that there is no doubt in those people's minds that as far as they were concerned, it was the Queen, and Meghan was furious, and Meghan used the first opportunity she had to put that old woman in her place. Who do you think you are? Do you think you are the royal? Who the hell do you think you are? Lady? Well, you're not even a lady. You're not even classy. I mean, you don't cock your finger when you take tea. And on that note, I will rest my case, saying thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please keep the questions and comments coming in so I will know what you would like us to be speaking about. Thank you so much. Godspeed. And if you have truly enjoyed this, would you care to share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and take good care. Bye-bye.